Hola, hola, bienvenidos, bienvenidas.
Hola, buenos días,
Buenas tardes,
tardes.
buenas tardes, días, noches, depende de donde nos vean. Bueno, bienvenidos. Son 8 minutos pasado el momento de nuestro encuentro. En Colombia, Perú, son las 5:38. Bienvenidos a esta llamada, esta videollamada, donde vamos a estar hablando de las 5 barreras que frenan nuestra grandeza. Nosotros somos el Instituto de Liderazgo Generativo y tenemos el privilegio hoy de tener a nuestro creador del liderazgo generativo y fundador del instituto, a Bob Dunham, con nosotros el día de hoy, quien va a estar compartiendo, haciéndonos reflexionar, invitándonos también a unas actividades. Mi nombre es María Paula Cabrera. Estoy liderando el equipo del instituto en Latinoamérica. Llevamos como instituto unos 40 años en el mundo y en Latinoamérica estamos llegando a los 10 años de presencia. Soñamos juntos con un mundo donde todos podemos prosperar y el que ustedes estén aquí es una manifestación de todo lo que nosotros deseamos, anhelamos y venimos creando. Por acá hay varias personas, varios miembros de nuestro equipo. Si pueden hacer así o hacer un saludito para que los reconozcan todos. Y tenemos a Andrés Novoa que estará haciendo la traducción de Bob, hoy ya empezó. Para quienes no se han unido anteriormente a nuestras llamadas, en la parte de abajo de Zoom hay un botón que dice interpretación y ahí pueden seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. Si quieren escuchar en original, van a escuchar ambos idiomas, el que el participante utilice. Y si utilizan inglés, van a estar solamente escuchando inglés. Y si utilizan español, solamente escuchando español. Entonces, por favor, quienes son nuevos, quienes no habían venido antes, buscar y si tienen algún problema, escribirnos por el chat y Sara, que es nuestra coordinadora de operaciones, estará apoyándonos y ayudándonos a que encontremos todas esa forma de escuchar y de beneficiarnos de esta maravillosa charla que nos va a dar Bob hoy. En este momento nos invito a todos a que tomemos una respiración profunda, consciente, a que traigamos toda nuestra presencia, a que ajustemos nuestra presencia y nuestra espalda y nuestro cuello y nuestros pies y nuestros brazos para estar aquí, para estar ahora, para conectar. Y también a que puedan encender sus cámaras. El liderazgo es una oportunidad para aparecer, nos permite aparecer, así que encender la cámara no solamente es para vernos y conectar, que es uno de los resultados de poder vernos, sino también para que cada uno de nosotros pueda aparecer completo, con nuestras voces, con nuestras miradas. ¿M? Bueno, y no siendo más el preámbulo, Bob, bienvenido a Sala. En este momento tenemos 44 participantes, estarán llegando otros más. Disfrutemos el espacio. Si tienen por ahí un esfero y un cuaderno, mucho mejor, porque vamos a estar trabajando, vamos a estar aplicando todo lo que aprendemos. Liderazgo generativo se aprende en la práctica. Bienvenido, Bob, y gracias nuevamente por ofrecernos esta valiosa conversación hoy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, let's have a high tens. Let's say hello to everybody. And I have some challenges for us in this call. They're part of being an effective leader. And there's something very important about leadership, coaching, and consulting. And that's your product. What is the product of leadership? What is the product of coaching? What is the product of consulting? The perspective we're going to take tonight in this conversation is to clarify your product is a change in other people. Your product is not what you do. It is not what you know. It is what happens to the people that you serve, that you are leading or coaching or consulting to. Your product is changing people, but changing them in a particular way, changing them in a way that they see their world with new eyes, that they develop a new relationship with possibilities, a new relationship with fulfilling a future that has value and meaning, and getting bigger than the cultural common sense that action is movement and activity. Movement and activity is part of the challenge of our culture today, because that description is a description that would fit a machine. And human beings are not machines. And so we need to have a new, uncommon common sense. And we use this term in our work that has been developed for over 40 years we're talking about being generative. But generative is not simply an adjective to be cool. It's not simply a description of some new technical steps or techniques. What the word generative describes is how to be human, how to be connected to our most fundamental power as human beings, which is the power of awareness, the power of choice, and the power to create. And so generative leadership, generative coaching, generative consulting is based on this foundation, that we are going to assist others to have a new and empowered relationship with their future and with time itself. They're going to have an empowered relationship with themselves. They're going to have a new relationship with the unknown. They're going to have a new relationship with action. And this is going to be done not in a way that often is executed in the world today. Oh, we're going to get more results by having you do more, by having more demand, more pain, and more sacrifice. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to be able to look at the situation that we are in personally, that we are in with other people, and we're going to look at how we look. We're going to act, but we're going to look at how we act. And we're going to bring new eyes, new ways to see possibilities, to see action, and design our impact in the world through the offers that we make, the offers of value, the offers of accompanying other people, accompanying them in a path of learning and growth that we're going to refer to as a path of learning to cultivate, to generate, and to thrive. That is the discipline of generative leadership, generative coaching, and generative consulting. Are you interested? Okay, then let's go to our next leadership challenge then. That to do this is a part of life This is not a technical field. This is not a set of procedures. This is part of life. So I'm going to ask you to do one of the most fundamental practices of power for yourself and others that we have learned over our decades of work. I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath. This is a test. Sometimes I do this with people on the call, and some people don't breathe. They paralyze. So let's take a deep breath. Let's go. Breathe. And I have a question for you when you take a deep breath. What do you notice? This is actually an example of what we're going to be going deeper in today, which is what do you notice is what do you see? What shows up for you? What happens with your deep breath? Do you have a relationship with your body that you can not only notice the breath or the movement or the act, but notice what it does for you? So why do we want to take the deep breath? The place in leadership of the deep breath has a couple of aspects we found that are unavoidable in the world of leadership. One challenge of leadership coaching and consulting is you have to be present. You have to be fully present, and that is an embodied physical act. It's an act of presence and connection with other people. And when the challenges show up, when the crisis shows up, when the triggers show up, our bodies tend to contract. Our clients' bodies contract. And one of the most powerful things we can do is be present. But we cannot be present in a tense body. We need to be present in an open body. No matter what the situation, we have to walk into the fire and be present. Does this make sense? That it's part of the game. So I'm going to have us take a deep breath again, but this time I'm going to have you go a little slower. Breathe. I want you to straighten your spine on the breath and relax on the exhale. And on that exhale, go ahead, take a breath, relax on the exhale. And now notice that you may be thinking about the exercise. I want you to let go of all the chatter in your head when you do this. So third time, this time, the point of the breath is to get out of tension and contraction, to become present and open and ready for anything, no matter what's going on. This is a fundamental leadership interpersonal skill for the most challenging moments when we need it. So let's take that deep breath. Come present, open. How'd you do? I see a lot of like, huh? This is something I'll be asking you to do not only in your leadership, but in our learning. When I come to an important point in our conversation, I'm going to slow down and ask you to take a deep breath and actually get out of your head, come present, and actually be ready for something that's going to show up. So tonight, we're having a conversation about 5 barriers. 5 barriers to your greatness. And so I'm going to share some images here as part of the conversation. And let's, I'm trying to figure out. There we go. So notice the image here of a garden. That image is selected for a reason. It's to remind us that in life, we need to cultivate. You cannot reap a harvest if you have not cultivated. What is it to cultivate? In leadership, in learning, in life, in consulting, in coaching, it is to expand possibilities and support yourself and others to grow into those possibilities. What possibilities? The possibilities that matter to you, as part of a good life, that matter to a client for getting beyond the challenges, the pain, the breakdowns that they're experiencing. And so that would be your greatness, to be able to expand the world of possibilities and enable yourself and others to fulfill, to grow into those possibilities, to make them happen. So I'm going to ask right now that you be engaged in another key skill of this way of seeing the world, of learning, which is to pause and notice what's going on. What's going on with you? What is it to be great? What does your body say when I ask that question? What is your answer? For some people, the answer that triggers them is, oh my God, if I'm going to be great, I have to be different than I am. That I'm not great now, so I'm going to have to really change myself. And it feels heavy because I'm going to have to become something that's not me. That's one way to hold greatness. That is not the way that we're going to understand greatness, because the kind of greatness that we're looking for is not that you have to change yourself to become something different, but to be great is to become fully yourself, to become your best self, the best possibilities that you bring with you in your life, that you hold yourself to. And when you do that, what we have learned about the world of organizations and leadership and teams and all the breakdowns is we have to learn to be great as a human being. Why do I say that? Because the common sense about action in the world today is simply to do more. The number has changed. Now you need to sacrifice and do more. A very common theme that we hear in organizations is do more with less. How? Well, I don't know, just do more with less. And people are often, that we meet in our learning, often are coming out of corporations or companies feeling burned out, and they left a place that was a place of an infinite demand for sacrifice, of being treated like a machine, that I'm only a number. And so the greatness here is not to learn some technical field to join in the dance of more, but to become the human being that is more powerful to create a future that matters. That is a different game than simply going into the mechanical common sense of we need results, do more. The generative perspective, that's what we're exploring here. What is it to be a generative human being rather than a higher performing technical expert or a machine or a human resource or a unit of production? This takes us to other aspects of being human that are fundamental to action, that actually produce better results in organizations. What is that? When we ask that question, we learn that we have to take seriously what is a human being. Because if we simply say a human being is a unit of production, then we treat people like a unit of production. And all the surveys out there are showing that the biggest issue people have when they leave companies or when there is the issue of employee engagement, the biggest issue is human interaction. It's not a technical issue. So what makes us human? We have a generative answer from our over 40 years of exploring these questions. Take a deep breath. I want you to be open to this answer. Our interpretation from our 40 plus years of exploring this question is what makes us human is that we care, that things matter to us. And I'm not talking about care as worry. I'm talking about care as what matters to you that makes you alive. That's part of all of us as a human being. What brings value and satisfaction and meaning is that as human beings, we find what we care about and we're taking care of it. Then that's not simply a conversation about external action. Those are internal states. And so that's the foundation of our greatness. And right now, if you followed Maria Paula's invitation, I'm going to ask you to write some notes. I'm going to give you questions. The answers we're giving you, we can give you some domains to explore, some ways to take new actions. And so my question for you is, what is the source of meaning in your life? Not just your work, but your life. And if your response to that question is, I'm not sure, that's perfectly okay. It's very normal. This is a question that our culture has not privileged, has not had us work with in most of our educations. Perhaps the most important question in your life and the most important question to empower your professional work, your offer in the world, your impact, is to understand the power of care. What do you truly care about? If you don't have a relationship with care, that you know what truly matters to you, then it's very hard for you to support others as a leader, a coach, or a consultant, to find the source of value, satisfaction, and meaning for them. So if you're a leader, for example, you're building teams. And you want to have teams that are full human beings, bringing all the possibilities of being human, that they care about the work, that they care about the clients, they care about each other, they care about being a good team. Care is not a technique, it is fundamental. And the fundamental aspect of the leadership impact or the coaching impact or the consulting impact is to help people clarify what truly matters to them so they can organize themselves to take care of that. So what do you truly care about? What we have found in our over 40 years of doing this work is what is normal is people may have a sense of that, but usually it's not a question where people are very clear. So in our programs, it's one of our first questions, and we have people take the time to continue to engage with the question and find that care. Because when we are connected to that source of value, satisfaction, and meaning, that's going to empower our work, the meaning of our work, the impact of our work, and the meaning and value of the people we lead and serve. So that's beginning to locate ourselves in this new generative point of view. We have to start with what is a human being and what is action. But the context about the world of action is we need to understand that we are in a world. We are in a world of many people, many organizations, many purposes. The fact that we as human beings care doesn't mean we all care about the same thing, or care in the same way, or care to the same standards. But leadership is about inviting people to a game where we produce what is shared. We share care. And that is going to be the fuel to produce shared commitment. And commitment is important not only for ownership, it's important for coordination. It's actually the foundational view that we found that shows kind of the skeleton. It's the X-ray of organizations where you can see what they're doing, what's producing value, and what's producing the waste and the frustration at the same time. Because the fact we're in networks doesn't mean we know how to do it well. So in this generative learning journey, and I'm going to be speaking from this generative perspective, of course, our generative programs of consulting and leadership are all about that. But my point here is more fundamental than the fact that we have programs. I'm talking about a view of human beings and actually about you. And so I want to support you tonight with this question, with these reflections of where am I in my life journey, my learning journey, my leadership and professional journey, and what are my choices? And I want to support you in finding your power, finding your ownership, and finding your choices, new choices out of this conversation that will support you in going forward and creating a future that you care about. That's our fundamental concern here. Then how do we do that? I want us to see that while we're in this world of networks, what are these networks? They're networks of coordination. These networks of coordination happen in networks of conversations. And those networks of conversations produces networks of commitments. And why do we focus on commitments? Because commitments are what shapes action and results. So while I've gone into this story of what is a human being, at the same time, we are re-understanding what action is. When I talk about what is a human being, I'm also talking about a human being in action. I'm talking about what makes a team effective, what makes an organization effective, what has an impact in the world in action. The human being here is not an abstract, philosophical, feel-good conversation. It is fundamental to understanding action in a new way. Then, when we do that, we've found in our over 40 years of work, I'm in my 44th year in this learning journey, by the way, and I feel I'm learning more now than I ever have before. This is a lifetime journey. This is not a one-shot exposure to concepts. What have we learned? We've learned that one category of conversations in the world, we call them world conversations, are all about the external results we want to produce. The numbers, the sales, but also the impact on social issues. What do we want to have happen in the world? And many people and many organizations have that conversation going on. But from this perspective that those results are happening or not happening in that network of coordination, we have to include the dimension of the we. The results are coming from the interactions of the we. In that dimension of the we can have teams, organizations, communities, countries, but we can also have relationships and families. And so there's this domain of interaction. This is where that coordination happens. That is going to produce the results in the world. And what we have found in our learning journey of over 40 years is if you're going to make a new impact in the we space, if you want to produce new results in the world, you have to learn how to make changes in yourself first. You have to learn how to make offers of impact in the world that are accepted and know how to fulfill them. That is what being a professional is. And again, we have found that we're not just learning to make more valuable offers and promises, but we're doing it based on this principle of care and meaning. so that the offers that you make are producing high value for your client and high value and meaning for you. Because so many people go into the learning or development space using old habits of working harder and sacrificing more. That's actually a symptom of a failing strategy. We need to be able to create more value, not by just doing more. We have to create higher value promises that actually take care of what's cared about. That takes us to the human domain. And when we do that, we need to learn to listen more deeply. We need to learn to observe in new ways what is truly producing the perspectives and the connections or disconnections in our client organizations. And to do that, we have to learn first in ourselves. Do we have the kind of awareness that can see this world in this way? Do we have the kind of skills to connect and show and invite people and lead them in a way that they're committed to new behaviors for new results? That's what we found, that action requires human coordination. And human coordination is the foundation of what leadership is all about. If a leader's not producing effective human coordination, they're not producing effective results in the world, and they're not being effective as a leader. And what is our generative consulting about? It's changing leaders and teams to be able to create more value, not only for the customers of the team, but also for the members of the team. And so with this, we find that we need to see the world with new eyes. We have to become aware of things we have not been aware of. We don't have time this evening to go in depth in this direction, but we have found that our culture, today's culture, is full of blind spots about action and about human interaction. I'll mention several of them. Our culture is blind to what action really is. Action is shaped by commitment. Commitments are shaped in conversation. So the most important action in the world of leadership and team and organizational behavior is the right conversations. And yet most people see conversations as a waste of time. They are blind to this phenomena. People are blind to the phenomenon of choice. Many people think that when their emotions happen, there's nothing they can do about them. No, there's a whole world of what we can do with our emotions. They think their body reactions, there's nothing they can do about it. No, body reactions are only the beginning of choices. Then we have the whole domain of learning. People have been trained in education that learning is understanding concepts and passing tests. And we have found that leadership and life are performance arts. It's not what you know. It's not the test that you're going to pass. It's only what you do. And we have to start with what we see. From that, when we see with new eyes, we can take new actions. That will produce new results. That's the whole point. But we've also learned that seeing with new eyes is not enough. When you see with new eyes, you open up new choices. But just because you see new choices doesn't mean you have the embodied skill to perform them. I'll give you a very simple example that we've learned over the years. We often find people who live in a state of overwhelm. And people are overwhelmed when they don't know how to say no. And it's a discovery. Oh my God. No, you can't trust the yeses unless you can also say no. If you say yes to everything, you're untrustworthy. And so the fact that people discover no doesn't mean that their body is capable of doing it. And so this takes us to what we call a learning edge. The places where our automatic behavior and our past has taught us a certain way to move, and we're uncomfortable and we get stuck and maybe we have fear. at these places where something new is called for, we call that an edge. And what the edge is about learning. What we found that's fundamental to being human is we're always here, going there. It's the path of learning. It's the path of life. So I'm going to ask, but let's take a pause. Let's take a deep breath. I have a question for you. You can write some notes here. What's your most fundamental awarenesses and description of where you are now in your life and learning journey? Where are you? And I'm not talking about what you're doing. I'm not talking about your calendar. I'm not talking about your activity. I'm talking about your living. Where are you in your living? Where are you in your learning today? I'm also going to ask you, what is your there? What we have found over our decades of doing this work is sometimes people have dreams, but the reason they call them dreams is they look impossible. They look like something that might happen in the middle of the night when you're asleep. But we need to learn to make our dreams come to reality. We need to learn to understand, where are we going? Where do we want to go? And what are our possibilities of getting there? If we don't understand how to do that, how can we lead people to a new future? How can we coach and consult people to produce new results? And so part of our journey is answering this question. What is our there? What is your there? Let me invite you here with 3 questions. If you could fulfill your dreams, who would you be in 10 years? What would your life, your work, your offers, your identity look like in 10 years? And as you answer that question, I want you to notice your relationship with that question. Is that like still a fantasy dream? I invite you to have your dreams of 10 years become real. That I have 10 years to learn, to design, to grow. I can become what matters to me, and that needs to become a commitment. Even if you don't know how. Many people use the barrier of I don't know. What I want you to realize that not knowing is not a barrier to action. It's the beginning of action. There are dozens of things we can do when we don't know to move things forward. We can ask for help. We can learn. We can experiment. We can prototype. We can innovate. We can invent. Not knowing is not a barrier. And so this is one characteristic of one of the barriers we're going to explore. So let me ask, what is your relationship to your future? Just write down a note. Is your future clear? Is it empowering? Are you excited? Or is your future unclear? Is it something that feels heavy? What is your relationship with power? Are you aware that you have power? Every human being has extraordinary power. We can choose in ways that maybe we don't know how to choose. We can choose our future. What is your relationship with yourself? Just the first word. What is your relationship with time? With resources? With the world? With uncertainty? These are the domains in which we want to become aware of our relationship and shift it. And we want to actually take on that now is the time to take ownership of your future, to declare it into existence. You don't need to worry about having the right answer because you always have the power to declare. If the last declaration wasn't right, you can change it. This is your power as a human being. But it's time to have a relationship, to declare a future and a path that will take you there. Now, the process is to cultivate that allows you to generate more of what is valuable and meaningful to you and others, and to thrive, to produce that for yourself and others. So when we go there, then that first barrier is not being clear. Not being clear about that you're there. And if you're not clear, that's not a problem. We're often not clear about important answers to important questions. It means that it's an edge, a learning edge. And so we simply take it on as something to explore. But if you don't know where you're going, then how will you get there? And so the first barrier we need to overcome is I don't know my there. Either declare a there and begin to experiment with it, or make it a project. What we have found in our over 40 years of working with these questions and concerns with thousands and thousands of leaders and coachees is that the question, what do you care about, is a guide to the there that will produce value, satisfaction, and meaning for you. Second question, second barrier. What is your relationship with time? Are you one of these people who thinks of possibilities and then says, well, I don't have time. My calendar's full. There's no time. Is there something important that you want to have happen in your life? Oh, yes, but not now, later. And I want you to see that the barrier is not in the world. The barrier is in you. You can always have a conversation of, if not now, then later. I can, if I can't commit to do this now, I can commit in the future. Because the future is created from your commitments. And so I invite you to write down what is your relationship with the future you want to create? Are you willing to include that future as something you are thinking about designing and in action for now? Or is it something that is deferred to later? The deferral is the barrier. How are we doing? Hello? Okay. And again, these questions are for you. They're questions for you to take a look at yourself. We're not learning some theory out there in the space. Third barrier. I'm waiting for certainty. The world is chaotic. Things are changing. I don't know what to do. They're uncertain. I'm going to have to wait. This is a time that calls most urgently for leadership. Leadership is called to find out how to navigate through the changes, how to create a center, how to make those tough decisions because things are changing. Waiting is not a leadership strategy. It's a stepping back from leadership. When we're coaching and consulting with leaders and with teams, yes, uncertainty is an assessment. Yes, it is a mood. Yes, it can produce a reaction. But what we are bringing to people is you can create in any moment, no matter what. And when we forget that, we get lost. We think the world has to change before we can commit. We have to see the path, but it has to fit into our past. It has to fit into our comfort zone. And our relationship with the future is disconnected. But to be generative is to say, what do I care about? What can I be certain of? My care. What can I be certain of? I can choose. And then the leadership challenge, the coaching challenge, the consulting challenge is to help people find how to be certain about their capacity to choose and act in the middle of change and learn to navigate that process rather than be hijacked by it, paralyzed by it. Our fourth barrier, resources. Oh, I can't do anything now because I don't have resources. I don't have money. I don't have time. I'm very busy. Resources are created. They are something outside of you, but resources, again, are created. When you look around and you say, we don't have food. We have a problem here. There's certain things I cannot do because we don't have food. But guess what? You can plant seeds. You can begin to plant the seeds for the harvest that is missing today. That resources are a place where we can say, here's what I need to do something now, but they are also something to invest in, to create. And so that is part of being generative. I want to talk about the resource of time, and I want to hit these themes that we've just spoken about here for a moment. I'm going to come back to this PowerPoint in a moment, but I want to share some stories about time and resources and when you're ready. The Institute for Generative Leadership in Latin America was founded by Maribel Gonzalez. And she and I were partners. She took on an affiliate relationship with the Institute for Generative Leadership Global, which is what I founded. And we've been colleagues with Maribel and the team here ever since. And the relationship with time, you may know the story, but 2 years ago, she had a unforeseen stroke, a serious stroke. And she has been in therapy and treatment, and it was the realization for those of us watching that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so when we're thinking that we're constantly deferring what is important to us, you may not have the time later. And so I invite us to look at what can you do now. I'll give you another example. When I was in my own journey, living with these questions, and I still am, by the way, I was looking at what was the kind of offer I wanted to make in the world? What is the kind of impact I wanted to make? What was meaningful and valuable to me? And what it was helping people learn with these kinds of issues in the domain of action, leadership, teams, action, communities. And I decided this was going to be my path. And there was a year that I said, this year I'm going to make the offer. I'm going to start this new game. And the year went by and I didn't do it. I said, oh, shit. I got busy. I wasn't paying attention. So I said, next year. Yeah, I'm really going to go forward with this dream, with this new offer. And the year passed and I didn't do it. And I said, oh, damn. And then I said, I'll do better next year. The third year, I noticed halfway through the year, I was being busy again. But this time I noticed. And I sat down and I had a conversation with myself. And I said, are you really going to do this? Or are you simply going to hope? Are you simply going to talk about it? And I was coaching myself. And the coaching I received from myself was, you know that if you don't do it, it won't happen. So one of the things, Bob, that you have learned and been helping people with is action comes from commitment. It looks like you don't have the real commitment. Are you really committed? Are you really going to do this? And I had to look deep inside. And I said, yes. And that took me to my learning edge, and I had to overcome the old habits. I had to overcome the old stories, the deferral, the comfort zone. Oh my God, this is going to be new and I don't know it. I had to overcome all of that. But I did step by step. There was no opening of the clouds and the ray of sunlight came down and I was enlightened. I had to take it a step at a time. And so that's the barrier about time. We always think we can leave it to tomorrow. What's most important to you, I propose to you, needs to live, even if you're not fulfilling a vision of what you want to be or can do, it needs to be now. So with that, let me come back to finish our five. The resources, there's a place that I guarantee will make this barrier block you, is when you say, I don't have the resources, sorry. Can't do it. That's the wrong answer to the wrong question. The question that will empower you, that will bring the power of your commitment to bear is, what would it take for me to make this happen? That is the conversation you want to bring to your clients. Not whether you think you can do it or not, but if this matters to you, if you truly are committed, then the question is, what's missing? What do I need to do to make it happen? And then we have trust. Do I trust myself? Maybe there is an issue there, but that, again, if we look, take a note, do I trust myself to take this step forward? And this is part of the generative perspective, is you don't have to have the answer yes. The answer no can be, no, I don't trust myself because I see this pattern and what makes that a generative opportunity? We say, I'm declaring that a learning edge. I'm going to get my own coach. I'm going to learn to trust myself if I don't feel I can now. Can I trust others? Can I trust learning? So if you're going to live in distrust, I have to have it already guaranteed. I have to have it already know how to do it. We will always be holding back. We have to be able to trust that we can learn. And this we have found in our generative work is one of the biggest barriers to people is that the way we were taught in our culture to learn was to understand concepts rather than to embody skills. And that is crucial. And so we have blind spots in the culture as well. We don't know what action is. We don't know what learning truly is. And so when we engage in people in their process of learning, we're not simply dealing with these personal barriers, we're also revealing that our culture has blind spots that need to be illuminated. There are more generative possibilities for choice, for how I work with my body, for how I work with my emotions, for how I produce action, and that is a learning journey, and it's a lifetime journey. As I shared with you, it's part of my lifetime journey. So these are the barriers. But as I started the conversation, I said, what is your relationship? The learning opportunity is, what are you going to do with these questions? What is next for you to clarify the there that is a source of meaning and energy and aliveness for you? What is your relationship with time? What is your habit for deferral? Where are you waiting for certainty rather than being certain I can create in the uncertainty? What do I need to do to have the resources, not be a barrier for me? And what conversations are missing for me to be able to go beyond distrust? And so we can choose, we can design, we can learn. There's so much that we can do. And when we get into action, this has a magic of your own. You know that when you're on a journey, every time you take a step, the world looks new from a new place. And so the invitation here is to take ownership of your future and to create it, not by waiting for it, not by hoping the world changes, but by taking the step and to do it together, to find the community. And we certainly, this is the work that we here at the Institute for Generative Leadership have taken on as our meaningful work, as our own learning journey, to enable leaders to transform their impact in the world, to create value, coaches to be able to produce that kind of leader and team, and consulting to be able to make hugely valuable promises and fulfill it with these skills. So with that, I'm going to ask us to take that deep breath and open to that first question. Where are you? Where is your here? Where is your there? And I'm open for any comments or questions here based on the invitations, the provocations. And I also want you to know that as I was sharing this conversation with you, every point that I was speaking about a barrier is also part of my life. These don't go away. That's why I said it's what is your relationship. It's not like you finally eliminate these things. I'm in the questions myself right now. What am I doing with my time? Do I put it here or there? What are the resources that I need to generate to do this or that? It's an ongoing practice. But the core of that practice is the capacity to generate. We learn, we cultivate ourselves so that we can generate more of what matters to us. And that is, I think, the fulfillment of a good life, to know what you care about and to be taking care of it and to be growing in the process. That's what we're about. So let me open up here for any comments, questions about how this lands for you, or how we would engage in these kinds of advances. Marisabel, please.
Hello, Bob. I'm very happy to see you again.
Good to see you.
And it was perfect for me to listen to you, because I think the question is, what do I care?
See.
So I think in these past years, there are so much things that I care and that I don't care, that I am like, yes, okay, that I'm like like sometimes spinning, you know? And
Sí,
then
sí.
I'm going to plant some seeds, and I keep on planting and planting and planting, trusting that something is going to grow. And I know I'm going to have a beautiful garden. And also I've learned to, I always remember you with your baby steps. And I keep telling me, keep on moving, but you
Sí.
don't have to hurry, because I was like in such a rush, in such an anxiety to say I want clarity. I want to know, where do I have to go?
Sí,
There
sí.
I go. No, and no. Now I put clarity aside, besides me. It is not the main focus for me. I think I've started listening to me, not to worry, not to hurry, listen to my path, listen to my rhythm, and that it's mine. So
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm like I'm like expecting what is going to happen, and I know that life is full of surprises. One surprises are good and others are not so good. But although in those surprises that are not so good, you find a lot of treasures there.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. I thank you so much for saying that. I think part of this this learning, this is that some of us wait to figure it out before we move, and they wait until the life is gone. And it's more about, yeah, make some reflection, yeah, make some choice, but then play, dance, experiment. You see, experiments are very powerful because you can learn from a failure in an experiment. We don't devote our life to something and then want to avoid failure. So we can always be in our experiments. And that is where the learning happens. That's where life unfolds, is to take the next step. I'm on my own edges with new edges and new offers coming and new doubts. I haven't been facing so much doubt in my life for many years, but now I'm dancing with doubt and saying, "Oh, my old friend doubt has shown up." Now what I'm going to do is try something. I'm going to go anyway. And as you say, no rush. It's my life and I'm going to live it. This is not about success and failure. This is about growing and expanding in the game. Thank you for that. Beautiful. Who else? Comment or question? How are we doing? So with this conversation, I just want to comment, and I'm gonna we'll hear from Eugenia. My hope for you in this conversation is, with the 5 barriers, that you have had a little bit of illumination of where you are and you're here to there. And you also see that there is, wherever you see yourself, it's not good or bad. We're all humans in our life journey, but there is the possibility to generate. We cultivate and we generate and go forward for the sake of what? For your future, for what you care about, for the contribution you want to make. It's not going to happen by staying where you are. This is a journey. So find your path, find your journey, find your community that you're going to journey with, and take small steps. It doesn't have to be leaping off of cliffs. So, Eugenia, please.
Hola, Bob. Gracias
Hola.
por este momento. Yo estoy aquí como un poquito asombrada, ¿sí? Muy agradecida contigo, con Maribel, con el liderazgo generativo, con los coaches, con los mentores del programa, porque me conmueve cuando traías el aquí y el allá, el aquí donde estoy ahora, el aquí donde estoy. Nunca me lo imaginé en la vida. Tengo 56 años y, dada mi historia, yo pensé que al haberme vinculado de la vida laboral, por mudarnos de país por el trabajo de mi esposo, como que cuál iba a ser mi futuro. Y hoy estoy en un lugar, en el segundo año como consultora, ya con negocios de consultoría. Eh, y entonces me genera asombro y hay algo hermoso, el care. Ese es el que hace que yo me, me olvide de la certeza, me olvide de como de todo lo que me genera miedo y hay algo que hemos aprendido contigo que son los bordes de aprendizaje. El viernes vi uno
Sí.
o sea, aprender a ver mis bordes y aprender a gestionarlos y si no los puedo gestionar, aprender a pedir ayuda. Ha sido para mí como una manera liviana de trascenderlos, pero conectadas con mi care. Y mi care todavía no lo tengo como completamente claro y he aprendido contigo que va cambiando y me quedo asombrada de lo que voy descubriendo. Entonces me llega ese allá con mis bordes, no a pesar de mis bordes, con mis bordes, conociéndome mucho a mí misma y como que cuando estoy conectada con el care, como que eh, no tengo que tener certeza, como que las posibilidades
Sí.
aparecen y me siento segura. Eso me pasa. Así que gracias.
Beautiful. What is certainty? Certainty is that we are breathing. Certainty is that we can choose no matter what. Certainty is I care. Certainty I can commit. Certainty I can have a conversation. That is certainty no matter what. But that is also the source of our ability to generate no matter what. And that is what leadership is about. That is what coaching is about. That is what consulting is about, is to be able to enable that in human beings in the world of action, that they need to do the learning in the me, to act in the we, to produce the future in the world. Whether the world is going crazy or not, we can. And uh, this fundamental act of taking the step on your journey is going from some version of I can't to living in the context of I can. We cannot control the world, but we can always choose how we dance with it. And that is what we want to bring to ourselves and to our clients. So with this, I'm going to turn over to Maria Paula and Olga and the team to wrap us up in this conversation. Please.
Muchas gracias, Bob, y a todos nos invito a que tomemos una respiración profunda para que continúe todo este mensaje, estas barreras que están dentro de nosotros, a seguir mostrándonos el camino, a que podamos relacionarnos de una manera distinta con cada una de ellas y hacernos las preguntas y empezar a explorar con curiosidad cómo podemos hacernos cargo de crear ese futuro que nos importa. Así que gracias, Bob. Voy a dar paso a Olga Bustamante, que es nuestra directora del programa de coaching y consultoría organizacional, y posteriormente a Lina Correa, que es la directora de nuestro programa de líderes generativos. Nosotros como instituto tenemos una oferta muy clara, muy estructurada, muy práctica y con muchos años de experiencia y como compartía Eugenia, mostrando grandes resultados en nuestros exalumnos, en nuestros clientes, en los consultores que se han formado con nosotros y en los líderes que han potenciado también sus equipos y los resultados de sus organizaciones. Y estas dos ofertas son estos dos programas que hoy les vamos a presentar de manera muy concreta en qué es lo que puedes lograr a través de estos programas, en la voz de nuestras directoras. Y los vamos a invitar posteriormente a quienes estén interesados, quienes quieran dar esos pasos adicionales en su compromiso con la construcción de su futuro, que haga sentido y que genere valor y satisfacción, a que tengamos una conversación muy corta, 20 minutos, 30 minutos, con alguno de nosotros, alguno de los miembros, mentores o del equipo de IGL Latam, para que conversemos y exploremos cuáles son esas posibilidades, cómo te puedes hacer cargo y hacer que esto suceda. Así que adelante, Olguita, Lina, el espacio es para ustedes y con esto vamos cerrando nuestra presentación de hoy.
Gracias, María Pau. Bueno, feliz noche para todos los que están por acá. Qué rico vernos aquí para conversar. Y siendo muy concreta, este es un programa en el que te conviertes en un observador y actor generativo para intervenir en el mundo de las organizaciones. ¿Eso qué significa? Que vas a poder tener estructuras claras de pensamiento, de observación y de escucha para poder acompañar el mundo de la organización, que es un mundo particular. Y lo quiero traer así porque muchos de nosotros venimos del mundo del coaching ontológico. Parte de la experiencia es que la capacidad de observación desde el coaching ontológico no nos permite entrar en el mundo de las organizaciones. Como consultores y como coaches que acompañamos a líderes, es súper importante poder entender el mundo de la organización. El mundo de la organización es un mundo particular que requiere de una comprensión, pero también requiere un cuerpo de nosotros como coaches y consultores para poder entrar a observar e intervenir ese mundo de la organización. Es un mundo enfocado en los resultados, es un mundo centrado en la acción y las estructuras que aprendemos en el programa nos permiten justamente escuchar, observar e intervenir para acompañar a nuestros clientes a que puedan adoptar nuevas prácticas que les permita a ellos como equipo aprender a coordinarse y aprender a generar valor como equipo para, para poder hacerse cargo del futuro que les importa. Entonces, ¿qué aprendemos en el programa y qué les pasa a nuestros alumnos después de pasar por este camino de aprendizaje? Primero, que han trabajado en su liderazgo, porque tal como lo traían con las 5 barreras, de esas 5 barreras nos hacemos cargo en el propio proceso de transformación que es necesario porque necesitas transformarte a ti para poder entrar en ese mundo de acompañar a otros, a tus clientes. Y poder saber que tú como coach y como consultor requieres del compromiso de tu cliente para que sean ellos quienes aprenden, son ellos quienes aprenden y los podemos acompañar. Entonces, tenemos un modelo de consultoría generativa que aprendemos en el programa, que nuestros alumnos tienen la posibilidad de aplicarlo con un cliente real en el programa, que nos va desarrollando las habilidades para poder entrar en ese mundo con la confianza y con la seguridad de que estamos generando valor desde el día 1 en que empezamos nuestros acompañamientos con nuestros clientes. Así que a grosso modo eso es lo que pasa con el aprendizaje después de que nuestros alumnos los acompañamos en un proceso que es desafiante, práctico, que es profundo, pero que además te da estructuras y herramientas para que puedas ir al mundo de las organizaciones a servir a otros. Así que muy invitados a que a partir del 23 de mayo estén con nosotros haciendo este viaje de aprendizaje. Es un viaje de 10 meses acompañado de coaches que somos ontológicos, que somos todos consultores y que además venimos de ser líderes en organizaciones. Así que aquí disponible y abierto el equipo de admisiones para acompañarte en tus siguientes pasos para que estés con nosotros el 23 de mayo del 2025. Lini, todos tuyos.
Gracias, Olgi. Bueno, buenas noches a todos. Yo les voy a contar del programa de liderazgo. La base es la misma. Estamos hablando de liderazgo generativo. ¿Listo? Estamos hablando de cómo me hago cargo de lo que me importa cuidar, cómo lo quiero cuidar, pero desde dos conversaciones diferentes. Una como consultores y otra yo ya como parte de un equipo dentro de una organización en donde pasan todos los desafíos que nos ocurren en las organizaciones de coordinar acciones, de llevar al resultado, de tener diferentes miradas, de no tener casi tiempo, de tener que ser muy efectivos. Entonces, el programa lo que busca y a donde vamos a acompañar a los líderes es a que desde las bases del liderazgo generativo podamos como líderes tener resultados que realmente se hagan cargo de lo que le importa cuidar a la organización y a nosotros como líderes. Normalmente suena obvio, pero eso muchas veces se va alejando y se va alejando y nos vamos desconectando de eso que realmente es relevante la vorágine del hacer. Entonces también es salirnos del hacer, a empezar a entender qué es lo relevante, qué es lo que nosotros llamamos gestionar promesas, gestionar el resultado y no solo gestionar la acción. Para eso necesitamos entender también estructuras de equipo, de qué realmente ser un cliente efectivo y un ejecutor efectivo, que eso es lo que vamos a ir trabajando en el ejercicio y hacer que mi equipo, pero equipo no solo entendido como las personas que me reportan, sino mi equipo también son mis pares. Mi equipo puede ser un equipo de proyecto, no necesariamente son personas que tienen gente a cargo. Yo lidero desde 1000 formas en una organización. Y desde el día 1 inicial, lo que vamos a hacer es tener un proyecto. ¿Cómo es el proyecto en el programa de liderazgo? Porque como ven en el liderazgo generativo, la práctica es fundamental. Si no hay acción y no hay práctica, no estamos hablando de liderazgo generativo. Desde esa premisa, tanto en el CSG como Olgui lo decía, que van a ir a un laboratorio, nosotros vamos a estar trabajando con el equipo que elijamos, con un objetivo claro que me lleve a entender cada una de estas estructuras en la práctica cómo funciona, no en la teoría, no en la idea. Hoy estamos llenos de información. Hay información por todos lados. Y la clave ahorita es cómo la pongo a generar acción, a que sea accionable y realmente me produzca resultados satisfactorios. El programa tiene una duración de 7 meses. Arrancamos juntos con el CCG, 23 y 24 de mayo, en un espacio conjunto de aprendizaje que como instituto valoramos mucho porque seguir escuchando diferentes miradas nutre demasiado el aprendizaje y nosotros vamos hasta diciembre. Es un programa que se adapta, obviamente toca sacar tiempo, obviamente toca hacer cosas, pero está también muy pensado para el día a día de una organización, de los líderes que tienen 1000 compromisos, para que puedan realmente producir resultados que les generen satisfacción y sean efectivos. Así que bienvenidos para que entren a este espacio de liderazgo generativo que, como lo decía Euge, que la pudieron oír, que es exalumna, va generando valor en el tiempo además, porque es un proceso, no es solo 7 meses, 10 meses, es un proceso que nos sigue acompañando.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Olguita, Lina, Bob, Andrés, todo el equipo, Sara, que ha estado detrás de bambalinas acompañándonos. A todos, muchas gracias por estar hasta el final. Estaremos a cada uno de ustedes contactándolos directamente a través del correo, de mensajes de texto o la forma que sea más conveniente para cada uno de ustedes, con todo el equipo para poder entrar en conversación más profunda de cada uno de estos programas. Y nada, vamos a cerrar con una frase que nos invita siempre Bob, y es vamos a continuar construyendo el futuro y los resultados, porque de todas maneras ya lo estamos haciendo. Nuestra invitación es que lo hagamos de manera consciente y eligiendo ese camino que nos llena de valor, sentido y satisfacción. Un abrazo para todos y nos vemos pronto. Chao, chao.
Gracias.